Hey guys, and welcome back to Brexit. Brexit England, Northern Ireland, and Eastern Europe. And in Brexit England, Her Majesty, the head of the Church of England, our very own monarch, the Queen, is dead. Sorry, I meant to say Diane Abbott has lost the Labour whip. Diane Abbott loses the Labour whip because she tried to explain the difference between racism and prejudice. It's quite simple to explain the difference between the two, right? Now, she could have just explained it like this, that black people suffer from racism and prejudice. White minorities will suffer from prejudice and racism. Now, racism is a visual thing, okay? So I'll give you an example. If I'm walking down the road, walking towards you, you don't know me, and Grant Shapps is next to me and he's walking down the road towards you, and we're dressed in suits. Now, who gets the racism? I'll wait for your answer, but not very long. I do, because racism is visual. Right? Grant Shapps is Jewish, but you wouldn't know that looking at him. How would you know? He just looks like any other white guy. Right. So therefore, to be racist against Grant Shapps, you have to base that out of prejudice, because now you have to find out that he's Jewish. Yeah. Unless he says it on the TV or whatever, you'd have to go into his background and go, oh look, he's Jewish. So that's the way you'd find out, right? So that's what Diane Abbott failed to do. She failed to just start, and then because it was a reply that she sent into the Observer, to the Guardian, I think it was, or to the Observer, one of the two. But she sent the reply into to them, right? And it's probably like one of the ones where she was off her face on a Saturday night or whatever, right? Probably had a couple of mojitos, right? And then she decided that she was going to send off this email, and she made the mistake of naming Jewish people in the email alongside, right, people with red hair, as if to say, well, Jewish people and people with red hair have got the same experience. And she never meant it like that, but that's how they've put it, because obviously, Keir Starmer wants to get rid of everyone from the left in the Labour Party, and it's because Tony Blair come along and done that, and obviously. The problem is, right, is that when you're on the left, unless you're going to go for like the Green Party, right, you don't really get much of another choice of who you can vote for, So you can go for the Liberal Democrats. Not that I would ever would, because Liberal Democrats was in collusion with the Tories, or I should say coalition. But so they so. He's getting, he got rid of obviously Jeremy Corbyn, taking the whip off Jeremy Corbyn. Now Diane Abbott as well. So he's pushing the left further and further out. But then, today we've got like a massive story about that Richard Sharp. Richard Sharp, he's the one who got Boris Johnson the 800 grand loan, and the next thing he managed to get himself the chairmanship of the BBC, right? But he's they depicted him in The Guardian. And they're saying, it's a very Jewish prediction of him, right? It was like a box with Goldman Sachs written on it, big nose, octopus round the throat, and puppeteer. So a lot of those things, they're saying, a lot of those things are anti-Semitic tropes. They say, well, did you ever see when Serena Williams was in Australia and she threw a massive fit? Now, the depiction of her, now I cracked up with laughter over the depiction, but only because it was Serena Williams, because it was quite a disgusting depiction of a black woman, what they'd done. But the only reason why I laughed about it, right, because Serena Williams is very disrespectful to black men, right? And she's one of them. I think she's in that position where she thinks to herself, well, I'm not black, I'm Serena. That's how she that's probably how she thinks. Like OJ, remember OJ used to think like that as well. But you see, with people like that, they've got to realise, that when the world sees her, they see her as a black tennis player. They don't see her as a tennis player. She's a black tennis player. She's not like Martina Hingis or one of those right? Who's just seen as a tennis player, right? If you look at football, all football, it's a black footballer, because that's just the country that we live in. And then if you was to go, so it's okay for them to depict, because in Australia, whoever whatever rules that was, oh no, it's perfectly fine. That picture with Serena, they was just like, no, it's perfectly fine. Whoever they went to about it was like, no, it's perfectly fine. Let's do that. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Can you see anything wrong with it? Right? But today, right, these people are all losing their minds over this depiction of Richard Sharp, right? Or you could look at Charlie Hebdo. In this country, people was like, well, Muslim people need to get a sense of humour. That's what they need to do. They need to find themselves a sense of humour. Right? You want to live in the West, find yourself a sense of humour. Right? Because in the West, we can take the piss out of everybody, especially when it comes to cartoon form. All you have to do is watch like American Dad or Family Guy, and you'll see in there, right, whatever it is, right, that's a stereotype about a race of people, they will go for it. Whatever the stereotype is, they'll go for it. Whatever it is. Right? Even in the yellow people, the Simpsons, like for years they had like this a white guy doing the voice of Harpoon. He's like an Asian shopkeeper in there, when they could have just went to South Asia and just got a person from there to do that, but they decided not to. So it's really strange how for some people, right, because see all of this, it's all critical race theory. It's all telling black people and black and Asian people that, you know what, right, white minorities are more racially abused than you. Because that's what they've been doing. They've been doing that for the longest of time. They've been doing that. But now they've come up with this whole thing over critical race theory, and that is what that critical race theory is really about. And welcome back to By Any Means Necessary. Thank you so much for all your messages sent me. A special thanks to everyone who signed up to the channel. I feel so blessed with so much people that signed up, so thank you so much for that. I'll go for all your messages, I'll answer as many as I can, and will like all the messages for definite. And I've said a special thanks here to everybody who's been saying to me, where the hell are you, man? Because I've taken some time off, because I do that from time to time. But I'm hoping that I'm going to get, I'm going to start running the channel slightly different now, because I'm going to be having some different presenters coming on to By Any Means Necessary. So look out for that in the future. But we're going to start with Barry Humphries and Harry Belafonte have both passed away. Both of them actually giants within their field. But the thing is, Barry Humphries, Dame Edna Etheridge, right, who is a drag artist. Now you'd think that how these MAGA lot and all these people are, you'd think that drag queens have only just come about. But I mean, these drag queens have been about the longest of times. I mean, it just seems like some might be acceptable, and for some reasons some are not. But that's just how it seems. But a lot of these people have supported things like Mrs. Brown's Boys and all these type of things. I mean, like, you've had this going on for the longest of time. I mean, Eddie Murphy, I'm sure Eddie Murphy's dragged up quite a few times in quite a few, well, especially in A Nutty Professor, isn't he? I'm sure he's dragged up he played a couple of women in The Nutty Professor, didn't he? I'm sure he did. I'm sure he played a couple of women in The Nutty Professor, didn't he? Yes, I think he did anyway, right? But, so these people, we had drag artists and all this for the longest of times, you know what I mean? Right? And I don't know if you've seen this Dominion story, because Dominion have managed to get themselves $800 million out of Fox News. But Fox News, right, Fox News was absolutely smashing Dominion to pieces with all this voter fraud business, you know what I mean, talking about the machines. And then behind the scenes, you had all of your Tucker Carlson, who's just been fired, and good riddance, right? But you had all these people who was just, if you heard the way how they were speaking about people like Rudy Giuliani or Sidney Powell and all these people, right? And how they're saying these people are absolutely nuts. They're crazy behind the scenes. That's what they're saying, right? And for some reason, right? And Rupert Murdoch's not a stupid man. Rupert Murdoch's a very smart individual, right? But for some reason, he's allowed all of this to come out, and he didn't need to allow this to come out. This has only come out because of how far he took the case. He could have settled this for a lot cheaper, a lot earlier. You know, they wanted 1.6 billion and they settled for nearly 800 million, right? So he could have settled this probably before it went to court for probably 200 million, right? But he decided to let it go right through. And I don't know if he's done that just because he wanted to get rid of Tucker Carlson, but for some reason he's allowed it to go right through. And you know, it's ended up making Fox look really, really terrible. But that doesn't really matter because none of the people who watch Fox really care about none of that anyway, because they're not going to see any of that anyway, because a lot of those people, they're so focused on like either Newsmax or Fox News, where they're just getting fed absolute lies on a daily basis every single day. So that's why but I don't understand why Rupert Murdoch allowed that to come out. But listen, Rupert Murdoch's not a stupid man, do you know what I mean? So for some reason he had his reasons. And I don't know if you've seen this story about the Republic. I'm going to go to watch these stories because I'm going to start doing my videos. I'm going to start doing like maybe one or two subjects and videos, especially because a lot of these stories now, they need much more time to speak about. But I know you do this story about the Republicans in America, right, where they're saying that women are having abortions after they've had the baby, and say, well, that's just covered by murder, mate. But they can tell their supporters this, and their supporters are just lap all this nonsense up. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, you know what? I wanted to throw something at the TV, either a shoe or a hammer. That's what I wanted to do when I was watching these people, because these are senators and congresspersons. Do you know what I mean? What the fuck are you doing? They're saying women are having abortions after, or women having abortions like 8 and 9 months in, and say, well, that would be under really special circumstances, and that circumstance would be that it's either the baby or the mum or the mother's life, and the doctors have absolutely no choice. That's the only circumstance where a woman could have an abortion that late anyway. Right? Or, that's the only... Right? And when the senator's asking the doctors just like, you know what? These people are so motherfucking stupid. How can you be so stupid to ask that type of nonsense? Right? So, do you know what I mean? That's what the doctor was... That's how the doctor just looked at it. The doctor was like, I can't answer. It's just... in all my time I've been a doctor, that scenario has never, ever come up. Right? So ask me something decent instead of asking me absolute rubbish. So that's, so... And then we moved back over to the UK because we've got nurses on strike. Because, I think nurses on strike today until sometime, maybe Tuesday. Government took them to court and they stopped, I think, a part of the strike. Which obviously is not a very good thing for the government to do, be taking the nurses to court. You know what I mean? But you see, the thing is, because the government have lost complete control of the economy. Our economy is in complete freefall. Because remember, by now, right, they really believed that inflation would have been halved by now. Because that's what they were saying all this time. Right? But the truth is, they have no clue. Because inflation won't be halved. Things are going up in the shops on a daily basis. £3.35 for a bag of chips in my local fish and chip shop. Okay, £3.35 for a bag of chips. Okay, so these are going up on a daily basis. I was speaking to the guy the other day, and he said to me, "Listen, you know what? Yeah, a box of onions has gone up from £8 to £30 a box, right? So you imagine, right? Yeah, if before 10 boxes, you pay £80 for 10 boxes because there's no VAT on them as well, right? So you pay £80. Now it's £300 for 10 boxes. Right, so imagine if your items, you're buying items that was £100 before, and now you've got to pay £300 for each item, because that's what the price of gone to, tripled, right? So that's why, as a result, we've got so much of our businesses that have just gone bankrupt, right? But the thing is, the nurses, right, have said, we don't, that money's not enough, even though the union leaders have said, no, you know what, we should take that deal, and the nurses have said no, because the union leaders said yes, and the nurses said no. So that's the people who said no. Because people, they can't afford to live in it. They can't afford to live. I see one nurse on the TV this morning, and she just simply said, well, to be honest, right, I'm having to move because, I can't afford to live where I'm living now. I can't afford it no more. So I've got to move. Because people's mortgages and that have gone up or their rents have gone up like £500, £600, £700, £800 a month. And that's with the doubling of the utilities as well, and the doubling of our food as well. And I don't see this Rwanda plan. Did you realise that the Rwanda plan, right, actually has a turnaround where vulnerable people from Rwanda, vulnerable refugees from Rwanda will be sent here? See, this is the thing. Right? People think, oh yeah, we'll send them all to Rwanda. Yeah, it's only a couple of hundred going to be sent there, but they're going to send the equal amount back to this country. right, of vulnerable refugees from Rwanda. So, it's all these things is just sleight of hand, isn't it, with all these things. Dominic Raab has been given his marching orders because he's a massive bully. He's a karate expert, and he probably goes around chucking his weight around to all his staff members. Where he's been shouting at people in the office and all those things there, right? And looking at people in really intimidating ways while they're in meetings and that. And people say, well, what? So you give them a dirty look? Yeah, looks can be very, very intimidating. That's the thing, right? So that's the type of stuff he's been getting up to, and now he's had to resign. And you've got Jacob Rees-Mogg on his weird. You've got some weird far right show that he runs on one of those stations, or talk something, or GB News or whatever it is, right? But he said it's a veritable blizzard of snowflakery that has seen Dominic Raab lose his job, and Oliver Dowden has taken his place. I don't know if you saw the Baroness Louise Casey report where she said that the police are misogynistic, bigoted, xenophobic, homophobic, Islamophobic, transphobic, and racist. And well, one policewoman said, you know what, right? She was staying at a colleague's house, and she woke up to find his penis in her mouth, right? And then you hear about policewomen who have been raped and all that by their colleagues, and senior police officers saying to younger female colleagues, if you want to get promoted, there's a commodity, right? You know what the commodity is for if you want to be promoted, and it's all sexual favours and all these type of things. You know what I mean? So and then you've got police officers sending pictures of murder scenes and all that to their friends and all that, and you think, well, who the hell would want you to? Why would you want to send a murder? Why would you want someone to send you that anyway? I mean, you've got to have some type of sick mind, do you know what I mean, to actually want to see a real murder scene. Do you know what I mean? Especially a really gruesome one as well. What would you want to see that for? I mean, it's like when you see people rubbernecking to look at accident, and you see a really bad accident and they're rubbernecking to look at it. I'm the person that's always behind you, bibbing, saying, "Get the fuck out of the way, you jackass!" Right? As if you're actually going to see anything. So just move. I don't even bother looking over there. I just carry on, But you've always got people. I say, if you want to look, right, why don't you stop your car and go over there and have a look? I really hate rubberneckers. Really, with a passion, I hate people who think who want to look at someone's had a crash or whatever, and they're looking up. Especially when you can see that people have been really badly injured. Let's talk about Brexit quickly anyway, because look, I'm 17 minutes in, and I haven't been on for quite a while. So I thought, you know what, the best thing I could do is probably like a good 20. But you know what, I could go through so much more because I've got so much more stories to talk about, to be honest. But anyway, let's speak about some Brexit. Because British people are being blocked from going into the Schengen zone because our passports have to be checked now. And where your passport has to be checked, right, there's certain dates and all that you have to adhere to, right, with your passport when you're traveling through Europe. And this year is going to get a lot worse later on this year because they're bringing in biometrics, and they already have to stamp your passport when you go in. Right, so when they're bringing biometrics, that's a fingerprint thing, or maybe an eye scan or whatever it is that they're bringing in. So that's going to double. That's going to more than double the time. And so if you think that Dover was bad over the last, throughout Easter, right, you ain't seen nothing yet. You really haven't seen anything yet, right? But this is all down to the British people thinking, actually, something, yeah, that the EU will give us a better deal than anybody else has got. For the simple fact is because we're British. And we can have our cake and eat it. And we was told that. That's what we was told. We was told that. We can have our cake and eat it. While the EU was saying, no, you can't. No, you can't. The EU was telling us at the time, they're saying, no, you can't. I can remember the chairman of the commission, the EU Commission, yeah, saying, listen, the leader of the EU Commission saying, listen, and send a tweet at a picture of cakes and said, right, you can't have no cherries, something like that. And all that time they were saying, oh no, we can have our cake and eat it. And nobody can tell us any different. We can. Right? Because they need us much more than we need them. And the German car industry would never, ever allow the EU to give us a bad deal and say, well, it's nothing to do with the German car company, right? And it's nothing to do with the EU's rules. This is just third-party rules. That's what we're accustomed. That's what we're dealing with now, right? So where Brits can't get into the Schengen, right? And now they're crying about it, right? Because obviously they're being treated completely different, and there wasn't before. I can remember going into Europe, and not even showing my passport at all. Didn't show my passport at all. Leaving this country, getting into Portugal, getting out of Portugal, and getting back into this country. Didn't show my passport at all. And so much people now, I don't know why they had the impression that because we're British, we're going to be okay, right, leaving the world's greatest trading market, right, and thinking that, something, right, we can still be exactly the same inside there. Well, they're finding out now that that's not really the case. It's never been the case. Will any of the main party leaders admit Brexit was a massive blunder? No. Because even still now, I don't know why, but you've got Keir Starmer won't come out again. But then again, because Starmer voted for the Brexit deal, which is, I would have abstained if it was me. I'd have said, no, I'm abstaining. And I would have said to all the Labour MPs, no, you all abstain. Right? I would have whipped them into abstaining. Everybody abstained. Nobody voted along with it, because the Tories have got enough votes to get it through by themselves. Right? And then I just stand on the sidelines, and all now I'd have been saying, listen, it's a complete disaster, isn't it? Because it is a complete disaster. I mean, why do you think our water is full of shit? Because we're not subject to EU regulations anymore. You couldn't have, if you're in the EU, you couldn't have your waterways full of shit like how we've got it. They wouldn't allow it. Right? So, look, for example, it's so full of shit that, when it comes down to things like the shrimp and all these type of things, and mollusk and all this, right? These things need special treatment, right, before they can hit the food chain. They need special treatment, because our water is like probably C class now, but that's on B class water. And before, a lot of our rivers was A. When we was in the EU, our rivers would have to be A. But now, right, so this is what all deregulation does. That's what deregulation gets you. Right? All of those water companies, most of them have been deregulated, and the bodies that are out there to look after them can only find them a certain amount of money. And considering that these guys, their profits are in the hundreds of millions, and they get fined like 2 or 3 million. If I was finding them, I'd be like, okay, well, that's, they'd get proper fines. Because the fines that they'd get, they wouldn't be able to pay no shareholders out that year. That's the fines they'll get if I was there. Do you know what I mean? There wouldn't be one shareholder that gets a penny, right? In fact, none of the senior management would get a penny, right? If I'm running that department, I'll say no. You pollute our waters in that way, right? You're not getting profits out of polluting our waters. No, it's not going to happen. Do you know what I mean? So I'd make sure that they don't get no bonuses, and I'd make sure that there's no profits going to the shareholders. Simple as that. Right? You want it, you make sure it's run properly. Right? You have to build new reservoirs. Right? You have to make sure that you can do adequate water treatment, right? So you don't have to spill a load of sewage into our waterways. But no, they've just allowed them to just get away with it. That's that. They just said, you can just get away with it, and that's that. And the Brexit capital, right, are upset with the Tories. The Brexit capital that's like places like Skegness, which is probably one of the last places in this country where Brexit is still probably just about popular. But even those people in Skegness are really starting to, obviously, with the cost of living crisis, some of the people are starting to really feel it. Because if you know how much, if you look at the amount of pubs and restaurants and nightclubs and all these things have closed down, that's because of the hospitality industry can't get staff, right? All their cost of living has like more than doubled, right? You know, people have gone from paying like, you know, in gas and things like gas and electric, from paying things like, you know, £700 or £800 a month, you know, or £1,000 a month, to it tripling. Do you know what I mean? So you know, that's completely unsustainable. So that's why so much of these businesses have just gone. They've just had to just shut shop, and that's why a bag of chips is £333.30 because simply because you know how much it costs, you know, to open your shop. Because the gas, obviously, they use a lot of gas and electric. So, you know, so that's why the costs have just got to keep reflecting. And these guys have got, you know, they're in these businesses, they've just got no choice. I heard about one business the other day that was, I can't remember which one it was, but it was like 3 or 4 generations deep, and they've just had to shut shop. But they can't afford to run it no more. So that's what's going on, is what's going on over here. But in saying that, Ron DeSantis believes Brexit was a good idea. But Ron DeSantis is a massive fucking jackass, right? Who thinks that, you know, that Black history is telling people with white skin that because this is that critical race theory again, right? Because you hear Marjorie Taylor Greene saying it as well. Do you know what I mean? You know, critical race theory tells white children that people with white skin are the devil, basically. Do you know what I mean? So that's why we shouldn't have Black history taught in schools. So, you know, so Ron DeSantis believes that it's a good idea. Brexit was a good idea, but you say, well, what the hell would Ron DeSantis know? Like, you know, this is the man who's trying to take on Disney. And the great Brexit wage increase was always a fantasy. I mean, you can see that in it just by looking at just by looking at what's happening with the nurses, with the teachers, with every sector in this country. I mean, everyone in this country, yeah. The only thing that you can say that the government is in front of, yeah, is their very own wages. Their wages, they're ahead of, but everything else, they're well behind. But when it comes to the NHS, when it comes to schools, when it comes to potholes in the roads, it doesn't matter what it is. They're so far behind. Housing, you know, you go back to the nurses going on strike because they've lost control of the economy. And, you know, the fact is, houses, they haven't built any houses in this country, whereas places like Germany have been building 300,000 houses a year since the end of the Second World War. And in Britain, last year alone, they just built 10,000 houses. They're 3 million houses short. You know, and people still keep voting for the absolute destruction of this country. Anyway, guys, look, I've gone so far over in this video. I'm not 27 minutes in, but, you know, as I said, this is my first video back, and I've done a few this morning, and they was actually much longer. So, yeah. Anyway, so this is quite long, isn't it? So I'm 28 minutes in. So, my friends, this is By Any Means Necessary. I'm the MC John Ribbs. It was really nice to meet you guys, and it's really nice to be back. So I will shortly see you tomorrow.